This is different from an allocated silver, where the client simply has a claim on a certain number of ounces but does not own specific bars. Allocated silver is supposed to be the safest form of precious metals ownership. It is physical, it is identifiable, it is protected, but the complaints that reached the LBMA in December suggested something was wrong. Clients were asking for documentation, serial number verification, and in some cases physical delivery, and HSBC could not provide what the clients were requesting. The LBMA informed HSBC that it needed to conduct an internal audit and provide proof that all allocated silver actually existed in the vaults. Between December 20th and January 7th, HSBC conducted that audit. The results were devastating. According to HSBC's records, they had reported to clients that 380 million ounces of silver were held in allocated accounts, but when HSBC physically counted the bars in their vaults, they found only 47 million ounces with proper allocated status. 333 million ounces were missing. This is not a small accounting error. 333 million ounces represents 41% of total annual global silver mine production. It is one of the largest precious metals shortfalls ever discovered at a single institution. The Directive explains how this happened. Between 2015 and 2025, HSBC engaged in silver leasing operations. They took bars that were supposed to be sitting in allocated accounts, and they leased those bars to other financial institutions. The borrowing institutions used the silver to cover their own short positions. HSBC earned leasing fees from these transactions, but there was a problem. The clients who owned the allocated silver were never informed that their bars were being leased. The clients were still receiving statements showing that their silver was safely stored in HSBC vaults, but the silver was not in the vaults. It had been leased out, and in many cases, the borrowers never returned it. Leasing contracts included promises to return the silver, but when the contracts matured, many borrowers simply failed to deliver. Some borrowers went bankrupt, some borrowed silver from HSBC to cover shorts, and then those shorts moved even deeper underwater, making it impossible for the borrowers to buy silver to return to HSBC. Others simply refused to return the metal, knowing that HSBC would not want to pursue legal action and risk exposing the entire leasing scheme, so the silver disappeared, and HSBC kept sending statements to clients, telling them their allocated silver was safe. On January 8, 2026, the LBMA sent HSBC an ultimatum. HSBC must provide documentary proof that all 380 million ounces of allocated silver physically exist in their vaults. The deadline for providing this proof is January 15, 2026. If HSBC cannot provide the proof, the LBMA will refer the matter to the UK Financial Conduct Authority for criminal investigation. The crimes being investigated would include fraud, theft, and misrepresentation. HSBC has 7 days to either produce 333 million ounces of silver or face criminal charges, but producing 333 million ounces in 7 days is impossible. That amount equals 5 months of total global mine production. There is no way to purchase that much physical silver in 1 week without sending the price into the stratosphere, so HSBC made a decision. They would exit the entire silver market, close all short positions, and use the proceeds to buy as much physical silver as possible to cover the allocated fraud, but the allocated fraud was not the only crisis. The second crisis involved insurance. On January 8, 2026, Lloyds of London sent HSBC a termination letter. Lloyds of London is the world's leading insurance market for complex financial risks. They had been providing insurance coverage for HSBC's precious metals operations, but the termination letter stated that Lloyds had conducted a review of HSBC's silver positions, and Lloyds had concluded that HSBC's reported positions did not match physical inventory. The letter used specific language. This suggests either fraudulent reporting or operational failures of such magnitude that the positions are uninsurable. Lloyds stated clearly, "We will not provide coverage for positions we believe involve fraud." The insurance policy expires on January 31, 2026, and Lloyds will not renew it. Without insurance coverage, HSBC's silver positions violate Basel III capital requirements. Banks are required to maintain insurance for derivative exposures exceeding $3 billion in notional value. HSBC's silver position at current prices is 7.3 billion ounces times $82 per ounce, which equals $598 billion in notional exposure. Operating a $598 billion derivatives book without insurance is a direct violation of international banking regulations. The consequences for this violation include suspension of the bank's operating license. HSBC has until January 31 to either find new insurance or close the positions entirely, but no other insurance company will provide coverage. Lloyds of London publicly stated in writing that they believe HSBC's silver operations involve fraud. No insurer will touch a position that Lloyds has already called fraudulent, so HSBC must exit. The third crisis involves a nation that holds a permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council, China. Among the 380 million ounces of allocated silver that HSBC reported to clients, approximately 280 million ounces belong to Chinese entities. These are not private Chinese investors. These are sovereign wealth funds, state-owned enterprises, and the People's Bank of China itself. In other words, the Chinese government. On January 7, 2026, representatives from the People's Republic of China contacted HSBC with a formal request. They demanded physical delivery of all 280 million ounces to vaults located in Shanghai. This was not a request to verify the silver. This was not a request for documentation. This was a demand for physical delivery, with specific serial numbers matching the allocated records that had been provided to Chinese clients over the past decade. HSBC cannot fulfill this request. The silver bars that China believes it owns, the bars with specific serial numbers that appear on Chinese account statements, those bars are not in HSBC's vaults. They were leased years ago, and they were never returned. On January 8, 2026, Chinese officials informed HSBC of the consequences for failing to deliver. China stated that failure to deliver the allocated silver constitutes theft of Chinese state assets, and China has prepared a multi-level response. First, China will file suit in the International Court of Justice. The lawsuit will seek damages of $500 billion, plus interest, plus punitive damages for fraud. Second, China will pursue criminal prosecution of HSBC executives under international law for theft and fraud involving state assets. Third, China will freeze all HSBC assets located in mainland China and Hong Kong. HSBC currently holds approximately $120 billion in customer deposits in China and Hong Kong. HSBC has also extended approximately $140 billion in loans to Chinese businesses and individuals. If China freezes these assets, HSBC loses access to $260 billion overnight. That freeze alone would trigger a liquidity crisis that could collapse the bank, but China's threat goes beyond asset freezes. China has also indicated that it will use diplomatic channels to pressure other nations to investigate HSBC's precious metals operations. China sits on the UN Security Council. China has enormous influence over financial regulators in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. If China decides to turn HSBC's allocated silver fraud into an international incident, HSBC will face investigations in dozens of countries simultaneously. The reputational damage alone could destroy HSBC's ability to operate as a global institution. China has given HSBC until January 31st to deliver the silver. 21 days? HSBC does not have the silver. HSBC cannot obtain 280 million ounces in 21 days without buying at catastrophic prices. So HSBC's board reviewed the three crises together. The LBMA audit deadline of January 15th, Deloitte's insurance expiration on January 31st, and China's delivery demand by January 31st, all three deadlines converge in the same 3-week window. The board concluded that there is no path forward except complete exit from silver. The directive mandates that HSBC must close all positions, purchase as much physical silver as possible, and negotiate cash settlements for silver that cannot be delivered. The board authorized a total budget of $201 billion for this exit. On January 9, 2026, 1143 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, a board directive leaked from HSBC Holdings marked strictly confidential, board eyes only, 7 words that will end 150 years of London's dominance in global silver markets, 7 words that confirm what analysts have suspected for decades: London silver market no longer viable, exit immediately. HSBC, the institution that built the London silver market, the bank that clears 65% of all LBMA trades, has just ordered its executives to close 7.3 billion ounces of silver shorts. In 21 days, the directive provides a price target for when this exit is complete. That target is $347 per ounce. But the real question isn't where silver is going. The real question is, what happens to the global financial system when the London physical silver market collapses entirely? Welcome to Boring Currency, the channel where we analyze the economic shifts that most financial media won't discuss. If you've spent decades building your portfolio, if you understand that markets don't always function the way textbooks suggest, and if you value analysis over entertainment, then you're in the right place. I'd like to ask you to do something. Hit that subscribe button below this video, not because we're chasing numbers, But because the information we're about to share, the documents we've obtained, and the timeline we're tracking deserve to reach those who will actually understand their significance. Also, leave a comment below, tell us where you're watching this from, which city, which country, because what's unfolding in London right now will affect silver markets, currency markets, and wealth preservation strategies in every corner of the world. Now let's examine exactly what this board directive reveals. NISBHE has 21 days to execute an exit that may be mathematically impossible. On January 9, 2026, a document began circulating among precious metals traders in London. The document was 8 pages long, marked strictly confidential, and it came directly from the board of directors at HSBC Holdings. HSBC is not just another bank. For 150 years, HSBC has been the foundation of the London silver market. They clear 65% of all silver trades that flow through the London Bullion Market Association. They are one of only 5 market makers that keep the entire London physical silver market functioning. And on January 9th, their board of directors issued an emergency directive. The directive contains 7 words that financial analysts are calling the death certificate of the London silver market. Those 7 words were simple: direct and catastrophic. London silver market no longer viable, exit immediately. The document was titled Emergency Meeting Minutes and Directive, subject Silver Position Crisis and Mandatory Exit Protocol. Inside the directive, HSBC's board revealed something that traders had suspected but could never prove. HSBC is short 7.3 billion ounces of silver. To understand how massive this number is, one must compare it to global supply. Every silver mine on Earth, combined, produces approximately 800 million ounces per year. HSBC's short position equals 9.1 years of total global mine production. But HSBC does not have 9 years to cover this position. According to the board directive, HSBC has 21 days. The deadline is January 31, 2026. By that date, HSBC must close every silver future, every silver option, every over-the-counter derivative, and every allocated silver obligation they have on their books. The mathematics of this exit are staggering. 7.3 billion ounces divided by 21 days equals 347 million ounces per day. The global silver market, across all exchanges, trades an average of 8 million ounces per day. By the end of the day, HSBC must purchase 43 times the normal daily trading volume every single day for 3 consecutive weeks. And the board directive does not just mandate the exit, it provides a price projection for where silver will be when the exit is complete. That projection, calculated by HSBC's own quantitative risk analysts, is $347 per ounce. This is not a forecast from a newsletter writer. This is not a prediction from a YouTube commentator. This is HSBC's board of directors, using internal mathematical models, telling their own executives that silver will reach 347 because HSBC has no choice but to buy at any price. The directive explains why HSBC chose this course of action. It wasn't a voluntary strategic decision. It was a survival decision. HSBC is facing 3 simultaneous institutional crises, each one severe enough to destroy the bank on its own. The first crisis involves allocated silver fraud, the second involves insurance cancellation, the third involves the government of China threatening legal action for theft of state assets. Any one of these crises would be catastrophic. All 3 happening at once, with overlapping deadlines in late January, left HSBC with only one option: exit silver entirely, pay whatever the cost, and shut down the silver trading desk forever. But HSBC's exit creates a problem that extends far beyond HSBC. The London Bullion Market Association, the institution that has governed global physical silver trading since 1871, requires a minimum of 5 market makers to maintain orderly operations. Right now, there are exactly 5: HSBC, JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs International, Scotia Mercata, and UBS. When HSBC exits, there will be 4, and according to market intelligence referenced in the directive, at least one other major bank is preparing to exit silver for similar reasons. If a second market maker leaves, the LBMA will have 3. At 3 market makers, the LBMA board will be forced to suspend silver trading operations. That means no more London Silver Fix, no more benchmark price for physical silver, no more centralized physical trading infrastructure. The entire global physical silver market, which has operated out of London for more than 150 years, would be forced to relocate to New York or simply cease to function, and HSBC knows this. The directive explicitly states, HSBC's exit may trigger the collapse of the LBMA. This is an acceptable outcome. Preserving HSBC is more important than preserving the LBMA. In other words, HSBC has decided to burn down the entire London silver market to save itself. The board voted unanimously to approve the exit. Every director present voted yes. The resolution grants the CEO and Chief Risk Officer unlimited authority to execute the exit using any means necessary. Open market purchases, cash settlements, damage payments, asset liquidations, emergency borrowing, everything is authorized. The only requirement is that the exit must be complete by January 31st. Failure to meet this deadline, according to the directive, will result in criminal prosecution, regulatory shutdown, and international litigation that could destroy HSBC entirely. So the exit is not optional, it is mandatory, and it begins immediately. The board directive contains a section titled LBMA Allocated Silver Audit Investigation. This section reveals the scandal that forced HSBC into emergency action. On December 15, 2025, the London Bullion Market Association received complaints from multiple large institutional clients. These clients reported discrepancies in their allocated silver holdings. Allocated silver, under LBMA rules, has a very specific definition. It means physical silver bars stored in bank vaults with specific serial numbers assigned to specific clients. Allocated silver is not fungible, it cannot be lent, it cannot be leased, it cannot be used for anything except sitting in a vault with the clientee's name attached to it. The client pays storage fees and in return they own specific bars that they can inspect, audit, or demand for delivery at any time.